Hi guys, my name's Colin and this is Colin Talks Crypto, bringing you this episode from a jet. We're going to talk about Cardano and its recent run-up, and we're also going to talk a bit more about EOS and do I feel that its incentives are aligned for EOS ICO participants, and some late-breaking news with Block.one joining a Bitcoin mining operation. Thanks for joining me. So first of all, Cardano, and let me just give you a view here of this. I don't know if you can see it because it's super bright out. Nope, can't see it. Let me see here if I can adjust it. There you go. Pretty nice view. Currently flying over the mountains to heading toward Austin, at which point I will then head to San Juan, Puerto Rico, my home. And hopefully you can hear me fine. I got this microphone set up on my lapel here on my shirt, but I know that it's noisy, so I will do my best to clean up the audio afterwards. There you go. All right. So let's talk about a couple things here. Let's talk about Cardano and its recent run-up in price. So, as I posted on Twitter, I do think that the run-up in price is highly speculative. I'm not saying that Cardano is a bad project by any means. I just think that its valuation for what it currently has to offer is not balanced, and it's way out of proportion. Just like the EOS price going to $22 shortly after the ICO was also imbalanced and irrationally high. So I'm not trying to be unfair in calling this out. I think that EOS has had its irrationally high priced moments as well. That being said, we still don't have the mainnet with full smart contract features launched. And so, yes, it's a highly speculative price right now. So great to all you guys who happen to be holding ADA tokens, and I hope it does well for you. I do feel that, this is just my personal take on what I think is going to happen. I think that it's going to be similar to other irrationally high prices that aren't necessarily based immediately on fundamentals. I think that Shelley will release, and maybe even Coinbase will add Cardano to it, and it'll pump it higher and higher. And then over the coming years, on a very long-term time frame, I think that it's possible that Cardano could drop slowly over time back out of the top 10. So ride it high while you can. This is not financial advice. That aside, just looking at the technologies, from what I see, I think that EOS is technologically superior to Cardano, and that is why I haven't sold EOS and I still hold it, even though the price is in a rougher place right now. Some of you guys might like to trade week to week or month to month, and in that case, maybe you can make some money on the Cardano speculation that's happening right now. But on a longer year-to-year basis, I just see the EOS fundamentals being stronger, and therefore I'm staying with that ship. And I do see, near to medium term EOS price surges happening, especially with things like the upcoming Voice getting closer to launching, and the Voice social network, as well as this potential news, I will get into this in a bit, about Block.one investing in a Bitcoin mining operation that is linked to EOSIO in some way. We're not sure yet how. We'll look at the pros and cons of that as well. So anyways, that's what we've got. We've got Cardano coming up the price ranks. I think that's highly speculative. I don't think it's going to last in a long-term time sense. It may last for months. I think that we could see Cardano up there in the top 10 for months, maybe even 6 months. But will it be there in 2 years? That I am not so sure about, because we do have platforms that are much superior to it, and superior in different ways. Like Ethereum has a developer network effect and developer numbers that are just vastly vastly superior to Cardano and to EOS. Cardano doesn't even have much of a developer community because it doesn't even have a smart contract platform that's live yet. So its inertia is just, it has so far to go. It has farther to go in terms of user base and dApp developers than EOS does. And EOS even has a long ways to go to catch up to Ethereum. So Cardano is just at the tail end of that line. You know, things like Tezos and Tron and EOS have a big head start on Cardano. So Cardano, typically, you know, in the past months, I've been watching its trading volume has been very, very small on CoinMarketCap compared to other tokens. The ones I just mentioned have basically had a higher trading volume than Cardano almost the entire time. And for EOS, it's been tremendously higher. Up until recently, Cardano's starting to catch up. But again, I think this is highly speculative. So that's my take on Cardano. A lot of speculation here. It has a long ways to go. You know, any bugs that may come up in the live net, I know you guys think there won't be. There probably will be, despite its very, very careful launch. Will have to get ironed out, just like EOS and other blockchains have had to go through these growth spurts and growing changes. Like, you know, EOS had to go through its Rex fixes and CPU bottlenecks, and it's fixing these things and scaling to higher lengths. Speaking of which, I'm just going to kind of just rattle off a bunch of news here in this video. You know, EOS just surpassed its all-time high. Its previous all-time high was somewhere around 4,000 transactions per second, and it just blew past that with about 4,500 transactions per second. So it just goes to show you that EOS continues to break new ground as far as performance and things that matter. Blocktivity.info is a good metric if you want to compare blockchains as far as operations per second. And as far back as I can remember, the past 2 years, EOS has been in #1 position on that. But Cardano does have a chance, you know, if it does put out a good product, if it doesn't have any bugs, which is very rare for a blockchain, and I think that's unlikely, and if it somehow gathers a huge developer community quickly under its wings and creates some viral dApps and networks with other blockchains and interconnects, maybe there is a chance that it will stay in the top 10. So I'm not hating on Cardano. Let's just put it this way. It doesn't inspire enough confidence in me to invest in it. If I was to do it, it would be purely because I'm trying to ride the wave and speculate on this hype, and maybe that Coinbase will someday list it. They haven't said this, but I think it's only a matter of time personally, and that will push the price even higher. And so it has that going for it on a short to medium term. But I've learned my lesson. Investing in things on purely a speculative basis, that's not a good way to do it. It's a way to get burned. It's a way to have people sell out from under you. And fundamentals will carry through in the long run. All right, so now on to part 2 of the video, which is going to be talking about EOS and some news that came out recently. Block.one, basically, I stumbled upon an article. I don't think anyone else has seen this, so I think I discovered this. It happened like 6 days ago, where this article came out from, I can't remember the name of it. I think I'll put the tweet here on the screen. It was like Northern Data, a data center company, and Block.one invested in this company and invested in a 180 megawatt Bitcoin mining facility with the option to upgrade to 300 megawatts for this Bitcoin mining facility. And I think they said it was in Texas, something like that. And there was a quote from Brendan Bloomer in this article, and I'll put that on the screen as well, where at the end of this quote, he talked about how it was going to be operating on or based upon the EOSIO software. And so that was very interesting to read, because if you understand EOSIO, which is the software that Block.one programmed that runs many blockchains, including EOS and Telos and Wax, Warbly, EOS Force, Boss Chain, etc., you know that EOSIO is, of course, a delegated proof of stake blockchain software, and Bitcoin is a proof of work blockchain software utilizing SHA-256. And EOSIO does not use SHA-256. So I'm not really sure what the overlap is here. And at first I thought, well, maybe this would have to do with voice somehow. Maybe Block.one wants to run their data centers, or some of the data centers in this mining facility, using all that power and setting up their computers there. But it doesn't make sense, because you don't need 180 megawatts of power to operate a data center. You need 180 megawatts of power to operate Bitcoin miners, because Bitcoin miners are very, very power hungry and consume a lot of energy. A simple data center, sure, it will consume some power, but not the order of magnitude that a Bitcoin mining operation will take. And the article and Brendan's quote both cited specifically a Bitcoin mining operation tied into EOSIO. So it definitely has some connection to Bitcoin mining. It's not just a data center. It doesn't look like. Otherwise, why would they be saying Bitcoin in this? So that leaves me wondering, what is the connection to the software? I don't see it. I don't know. It could be a lot of things. Some users have speculated that maybe they're going to try to mine a side chain that somehow, like a layer 2 side chain that connects to the Bitcoin main chain. Some users have speculated that maybe this will have something to do with wrapped Bitcoin or transporting Bitcoin on a layer 2. But again, those things, well, at least the latter doesn't require hash rate. You can wrap a Bitcoin and transport Bitcoin on a layer 2 on a purely proof of stake. You don't need to mine that in any way. So I'm not really sure why Bitcoin mining would be necessary for a wrapped BTC. I don't think it is. So I think that it's something else. Another user speculated that maybe they're going to, mine Bitcoin and somehow use the value that's mined to support or prop up the value of the voice token itself. I think that's highly unlikely also. I don't see why they would do this very disconnected Bitcoin token mining and somehow use that to fund the value of the voice token. It just doesn't make sense. So I asked Brendan on Twitter if he would chime in and share with us what perhaps is the plan here, because honestly I can't really guess it, and it's really just speculation at this point. Now this brings something interesting to my mind here, and I sort of spotted this more recently, and this is me playing devil's advocate. Now, as you know, from day one I've been a die-hard EOS supporter, but I also don't hesitate to cast a critical eye when it is due. And some of you EOS fans, I guess you don't like when I do this, but this is the nature of being an investor. You look at the good and you look at the bad, and so I do both. I'm not blinded to the bad because, as an investor, if I see something that makes me alarmed, then I look at it and then I decide whether to adjust my portfolio holdings percentage-wise based on the risk assessment that I see, or increase my portfolio holdings, or sell entirely. So I'm just prefacing this next statement with, I'm still holding my EOS. I haven't sold any based on this news, but I am gonna cast a critical eye on this because, so if you remember from the beginning of the EOS ICO, now of course Block.one distanced themselves legally with a bunch of legalese that said basically there is no promise of anything. There's no promise of a token. There's no promise of an EOS blockchain. All they're doing is creating software, and that's it. Maybe the blockchain will never even launch. So, they've covered themselves legally. Now, aside from that, being realistic, we bought their token, those of us who did participate in the ICO, and so we did invest in this vision of the EOS blockchain and what they're creating. So I do expect them to get our backs as investors. I do think that they do owe us their forthrightness and their best efforts to increase the value and the performance and the features of their products. And I think they have been doing that with the EOSIO software. They have constantly, diligently released new versions, new upgrades, faster than almost any other blockchain. And they've been doing an awesome job with the EOSIO software. But I just want to take you back to the very beginning when the ICO was happening. And if you remember, there was a lot of promotion about this new concept, this new paradigm in a new type of business model whereby the user interests are more aligned than ever with the company's interests. And to give you an example of how this was done, and I'll show a little picture here. I'll have to find it where they kind of drew a 3-part diagram showing the alignment, this new alignment structure for companies. But to give you an example of this, we had, I think as Mike Novogratz said back in the day, the decentralized Uber, which was Duber, as he jokingly referred to it, D-U-P-E-R, decentralized Uber, and how, normally when you use a ride-sharing service, you load up the app, you pay the $20 on your Visa card, and you get driven somewhere. And aside from that, there's no further interest from the user point of view. If Uber fails, it's nothing on the user's back. They can just use a competing platform, they don't have to care. But with Duber, you get your tokens and you buy your ride sharing, but maybe you have some leftover tokens. Well, those tokens are then the share in the platform itself. And that's where it begins to marry the user interest more closely with the company, because the user then cares more about what happens to the value of the company, to the point where on certain platforms, they're open source. They could add functionality to Duber or features that weren't present before, or improve a bug, and that would then improve the value of the tokens they're holding as just a mere user. And so this is incredible. This marries the user interest in that company, and it kind of closed loops on the business. Or a Starbucks. The Starbucks could issue a Starbucks token, and the user, instead of just paying $5 to get his coffee, might have a bunch of tokens. And maybe he wants those tokens to go up, so he makes a better way to customize his drink with the Starbucks app. And that then increases everyone's tokens value with Starbucks, and it increases the user experience. So you have this vested interest for all parties involved to be improving on that platform. So I'm giving you those examples to show you how this was presented like that at the beginning of the EOS ICO, and I think it sounds incredible. Now, this is sort of hypocritical to what's actually happening with EOS and Block.one itself. It's ironic to me that this was the promise of Block.one, and yet Block.one currently has done some things. They've done some things that have aligned token holder interests, like hackathons. Hackathons do improve the value of the blockchain, albeit all EOSIO blockchains in some cases. They're not necessarily specific just to EOS, but at least it's in the general field of EOSIO. I wish it would be specific to EOS, but Block.one is trying to distance themselves from full liability of EOS and full centralized control. So they need to have like 10% or less of the token supply. But a hackathon is an example of how they are using the funds that they generated from EOSIO token holders to fund EOS-based or EOSIO-based projects. So that, I think, is somewhat aligned. An example of something that I feel is not so aligned, although they would justify it as protecting their funds, and I can see it to a degree, is buying 200,000 Bitcoin. So Block.one currently is one of the largest holders in Bitcoin tokens themselves by owning 200,000 Bitcoins. And that's worth an enormous, I think it's hundreds of millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin. I'll have to do the math on that. But that's an example where, they took $4 billion worth of EOS ICO funds, and then they just threw it into Bitcoin. Like, great for diversifying your assets, but we supported EOS, and now that money got funneled into another blockchain entirely. So I'm a little mixed feelings about that one. Now, here's the latest news that I have mixed feelings about. And again, to be honest, I don't have all the data because We don't know yet, so let's hear what Brendan has to say. But Block.one investing in a 180 megawatt or 300 megawatt Bitcoin mining facility that somehow relates to EOSIO may or may not benefit token holders. And so we have to see, how does this benefit token holders? Because if it doesn't benefit token holders, well then, I don't know, I'm a little pissed off about that, because thinking, I'm investing in this company that has my back. And if they're investing in things that only have their back, they're the only ones who benefit from this. Like, let's do the worst case example. Let's say that they invest in a 180 megawatt Bitcoin mining operation, and it generates them Bitcoin passively, and they make some return on their investment. Well, that doesn't benefit me at all. So why the hell should I be happy about that? They used our money to benefit themselves. Now, to be fair, that's not what it said. It did say it's based upon EOSIO. So again, I'm waiting for Brendan to chime in and explain, how does this relate? Because I'm sure it does. I just don't know how closely it benefits us. Now, another example of some stuff that does not benefit EOSIO contributors is the very fact that the EOSIO software itself is used by many different blockchains. Like I said, EOS Force, BossChain, Wax, Warbly, Telos, EOS itself, and others. There's probably at least 10. And while there are smaller market caps, they get to use this software for free. Now, some of these blockchains, like Telos, for example, or Warbly, did give EOS ICO participants an airdrop. They give us tokens based on that snapshot, but some did not, like Wax. I don't think that Wax itself, being an EOSIO blockchain, they didn't give us any tokens. And yet here Wax is, I'm just using them as an example, and there are others, of a blockchain that does use the EOSIO software for free without having paid a penny. So others who were participating in the ICO basically gave Wax and other blockchains free software and free updates for 10 years, because that's how long, at a minimum, Block.one said that they're going to be updating and revising and iterating on their software, and they're getting paid with that EOS tokens, right? But all these other blockchains get to use it for free. And so this is another example of what I feel is a bit of a hypocritical misalignment of interests with EOS token holders, especially ICO member token holders, who funded the very ability of Block.one to exist. And yet there's this splintering and diluting of value where you have these competing blockchains that are based on this free software they didn't have to pay anything for, and yet the ICO participants did. And I understand that there's the argument that perhaps it is a good thing that these other blockchains exist. I don't personally agree. I think that, yes, they may get linked together and combine their powers, and that's cool. I think that Liquid Apps can do that anyways with any blockchain. So I'm not really worried about having 100 iterations of the EOSIO software running blockchains getting linked together when Liquid Apps can do it itself. But some people will argue that that's a benefit. I think that it's a dilution of the ICO token holders. And that's what I see it as, especially when those blockchains are not crediting ICO members with tokens, when they don't use and they don't honor that snapshot. I think that that is a non-aligned interest. And so just to bring it back to my original point, I think that's it's ironically hypocritical because, Block.one and their software was all about enabling businesses to be more aligned with their users. And yet Block.one itself creates this software that enables a misalignment with token holders from the ICO, with these freeloaders, for all intents and purposes, utilizing their software. So we're going to have to see, and again, Brendan's usually really good about clarifying and informing us on what's happening, so I hope he does. I'm sure he will. I'm sure once he sees the post, he'll share some more information with us all, and we get to see what he has to say. And so I look forward to seeing that. And I hope it does benefit not just EOSIO, but EOS specifically. And while I'm hitting on these points here, another example of a misalignment that is contrary to this whole, stated alignment of user interests with new business models is the Voice platform itself. You know, Voice was originally stated to be run on the EOS platform, and then Block.one and Brendan kind of reneged on that and basically did not commit to running on the EOS blockchain. Basically, it sounds like it'll be likely, but there's this non-committal factor, and that non-committal factor is a misalignment of interests. And again, that's a hypocritical statement from the very beginning, when the whole thing about EOS was how it so powerfully aligns corporate interests with token holder interests. And yet the very company that creates this platform, Block.one, won't even commit Voice itself or the software itself to one blockchain, right? So now Voice is stated to be by Block.one that it's going to be run on EOSIO blockchains and perhaps more than one EOSIO blockchain. And so again, how does that help the token holders? It only helps the EOS token holders in proportion to how much of the blockchain is run with tokens that are a product or byproduct of the ICO directly. For example, let's say that...
Sir,
yes.
I want to ask you, please wear the face mask.
Okay, so I'm getting asked to put on my face mask on the plane, so I'm going to do that now for the rest of the flight. So I have no choice here, being forced. So we have to hope that the Voice platform is run on the EOS network. But it would be great to see a commitment from Block.one itself. This thing's falling off, so I'm just going to go with the flow here. And the last point here will be that, you know, in a traditional investment in a traditional company, there will be annual shareholder meetings. And they have annual shareholder meetings because it gives the investors confidence that the company is using the funds in ways that will benefit the investors. Because why else would investors give that company money? And so that's what I'd like to see with Block.one more so. Commitment to the investors that made them what they are. Commitment to the investors that gave them the $4 billion that gave them the ability to invest in a 180 megawatt Bitcoin mining facility, that gave them the money that enables them to program the EOSIO software and iterate it for all these different chains that may have not funded them in the first place, that gave them the $4 billion that enables them to build the Voice platform. And so I guess we'll have to wait and see. But that's my message for this video: alignment. I want to see more alignment with Block.one and their actions. I want to see them promoting and investing in things that directly return to the EOS token holders. Because while their initial terms of services may protect them from that, commitment, all the legal stuff aside, just on the basis of doing what's right and just being fair, the right thing to do is to invest in those who supported you. I know that if someone gave me $4 billion, I would damn sure do everything I could to support those people because it's the right thing to do. And I'm not saying that Block.one isn't doing the right thing, but I think that they could do more of it, and I think that they owe it to us, and I think that it's not too much to expect. So anyways, guys, that's what I have to say for this video. Sorry for the mask and all this noise, but that's the nature of our world today. Be safe. Please share this video with your friends. Have a great day. Talk to you again soon.